Good afternoon. Blazing hot day in the brutal capitalist dictatorship of Kuala Lumpur, isn't it? Yes, I'm about to get my lunch now after my gym session. And today I'd like to respond to an American gentleman who is rather upset about some comments I've made, in which I called for the downfall and dissolution of the United States. Pardon my limp. I seem to be walking with a limp because I've injured my foot. But I assure you, I will be fit as a fiddle tomorrow. Yes. So let me clarify a couple of things, and hopefully we can find reconciliation in this misunderstanding. I think I've made my position on the United States quite clear. I only hate the country, but I love the people, and I love certain things about America, such as your Kentucky bourbon and country music, yes. So I would not wish any harm to befall the lovely people of the United States, of course. You know, I assure you, first of all, that I have absolutely nothing against the ordinary people of the United States. My grievances are merely with the United States as a political and cultural institution. And yes, I don't like your Star-Spangled Banner. That flag makes me sick, to be honest. But that's got nothing to do with you, personally. I'll judge every American as an individual, you know. I'm not going to assume anything about any American I meet until I know them as a person. But you can't blame me for thinking that America is the motherlode of misery and suffering in the modern world, after seeing all the misery and suffering that flag has represented. So to all of you who think that I'm unfairly judging Americans, that I'm being unfair towards the people of America, and I'm dehumanizing them, no, I am not. In fact, I don't know why you would treat the downfall of the United States as some kind of sad occasion, which has brought not only misery towards the global south and to the Middle East, but also misery to its own people with its brutal laissez-faire capitalism. And that is what the Star-Spangled Banner represents. Rugged individualism, laissez-faire capitalism. Well, the downfall of all of that would liberate Americans themselves. It would liberate them from the fetters of laissez-faire capitalism, and it would free them to pursue their own interests and to be themselves. When I say for the world to live, America must die, it is no different from saying for Palestine to live, Israel must die. Because America and Israel are both equally legitimate, or should I say equally illegitimate. They were founded on land theft, ethnic cleansing, and brutal colonization and subjugation of native people. But you can change. You can redeem yourself. And that is through the dissolution of the United States, which in my opinion is the only way that you're going to liberate yourself from the shackles of rugged individualism and unfettered capitalism. But you'll basically become a civilized country for once, okay? So you should not consider the call for the dissolution and destruction of the United States as some kind of a personal affront towards you. On the contrary, I call for the downfall of the United States because I care for the American masses, and I care for the global south as well. But yeah, it should be seen as a happy occasion when the American people are finally free from that American nightmare called the American dream, and from the delusion of rugged individualism. Yes, and the only place that the Star-Spangled Banner should sit, as well as the Israeli flag, The Star-Spangled Banner belongs in the dustbin of history and should be left there. And a new identity ought to be carved out, not in the image of those genocidal rapists like Thomas Jefferson, but in an identity forged based on spirituality and conscience. Because the American identity that you and Midwestern Marx and Jackson Hinkle claim is the identity of the American masses is a very, very Anglo-centric identity, because you use men like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson as symbols of America, when instead you should be using Native American chiefs, stellar moral characters, not genocidal land thieves, as your symbol of America. Because the so-called American culture that you have forced on that region is fundamentally Anglo-Saxon Christian culture that was basically enforced on the native people. Do I think that, of course, people who are descendants of these people who forced this on the Native Americans should be responsible? Yes and no. While they should not be punished for the sins of their ancestors, they do have a responsibility, just like the people in Malaysia, the majority Malays, do have a responsibility to the native people, the Orang Asli. I do believe that the white people of America have a responsibility to honor and uphold the traditions of the Native Americans, you see. So I don't think it's unreasonable that you scrap George Washington and Thomas Jefferson as symbols of America and put in Native American chiefs as symbols, and you rip up that flag and put a flag that honors the heritage of the native people of America whom your ancestors colonized and brutalized. If you don't do that, it shows a deep-seated lack of remorse, and it shows a deep-seated sense of Western chauvinism, to think that American culture is really the culture of George Washington or Thomas Jefferson. But I am aware that many Americans, were brought there against their will, like the African American slaves, or the Chinese indentured servants, or the Irish, the descendants of the Irish who became white Americans. It's not their fault, of course, what happened as a result of the English colonization of America. I mean, people like George Washington were English after all, right? It's not their fault. But at the same time, as long as they suffer from the American mind virus, as long as they have a rugged individualist American mentality, well, as long as they view Native American people as an afterthought rather than colonized people whose rights were taken away, well, then they too are collectively guilty, you see. I mean, Americanism is a sickness. This rugged individualism that you guys practice, Americanism is hurting Americans. Americans are miserable unless they're in the top 10 percentile of society. The general American is miserable. The general American, who is a proud American, who follows the American way and believes in the American dream, is a miserable person. I am offering you the solution to get out of this miserable state. But the thing is, Americans are also very convinced that their culture is superior and their ways are the best way in the world. And so to try to help an American is like trying to point a blind man towards light. I don't think it's any surprise that America is one of the most miserable, nihilistic societies in the world, and it's all because of your rugged individualist culture that is responsible for this. Mass shootings, people throwing out their children, broken families, mass stabbings, crimes like, violent crimes on the streets. These are all symptoms of a sick society. Yes, I'm not pretending that the global south is perfect, but you have to admit that if people in the global south are uncivilized, it's because we have been taught by the colonizer to be uncivilized. Because we were always civilized for hundreds of years until the colonizers showed up. So, the thing is, if people in America are uncivilized, it is not their fault. It is the fault of being very, very devoted students of the American way. America is a sick society, and I'm like a doctor who's trying to prescribe medicine, but the patient doesn't want to take the medicine because, well, the medicine is far too bitter to swallow, isn't it? But the fact of the matter is that you would be far better off if you simply abandoned the American way, abandoned this mind virus of Americanism, and stood with the oppressed people of the global south. Consider yourself mentally a global southerner, not an American. You know? Well, I'm going to end this video now, so I think I've said enough, but yes. I stand by my point that for the world to live, America must die, because America has not only brought misery physically through violence, but also has brought misery by imposing the American way on other countries. And other countries have become miserable as a result, right? And the fact of the matter is that your elites, even the people that you idolize, like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson, they never cared about you. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you can come to abandoning the American way and becoming a civilized society. Yes, if the Russians could get rid of their Tsar, the Russians could put an end to that to the Tsar's rule, and they could become a Soviet republic. I believe it's also going to be a happy occasion when America in its current institution dies. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.